Hi, my name is Adi Roy. I'm an actor and I play Aladdin in Disney's Aladdin on Broadway. And you're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing.
Yeah. My name is Abhay Dandekar, and I share conversations with talented and interesting individuals linked to the global Indian and South Asian community. It's informal and informative, adding insights to our evolving cultural expressions, where each person can proudly say, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." Hi, everyone. On this episode of Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing, we share a conversation with Broadway lead actor Adi Roy. Stay tuned. Once again, thank you for taking the time and effort to listen or watch. I totally appreciate you engaging with me on Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing, and for sharing this with your friends and family. And if you're enjoying these, please take a moment and share a kind rating, subscribe, and submit a review wherever you might be getting this right now. So I've always loved music, and I've always enjoyed great acting performances. When I was growing up, my parents exposed us to Hindi films, and we had our fair share of rented videos from the Indian grocery store. But since all four grandparents were close by, Marathi theater and especially musical theater was pretty prominent in my house. And when I was in fourth grade, my teacher was a big musical theater buff, and we took field trips to go see Evita and Sweeney Todd back in the day. And then about 8 years ago, when Hamilton opened up in LA, and after the kids had memorized just about every song, we watched and marveled and took my parents to go see the hit Broadway show. So as you can tell, I like musicals and theater of any variety, and I've always wondered what actors on Broadway go through, what motivates them, and what helps them build relationships to cultivate trust. So it was wonderful to share a conversation with Adi Roy, lead actor for the hit Broadway musical Aladdin. Adi was born in Singapore and grew up mostly in New Jersey. He had pursued acting as a teen, and when he was a drama student at NYU, he landed his first Broadway role in Jagged Little Pill, based on the music of Alanis Morissette. Adi next joined the cast of Aladdin as the lead role on its North American tour through over 63 cities. And this past summer, Adi started his run as Prince Ali in the lead role for Aladdin on Broadway in New York. We had a chance to catch up and talk about actor life, about auditioning for the next big thing versus being content, and even some Alanis Morissette was reviewed too. But we started out because I was just curious about it by going over his usual pre-show routine.
I think in general, it has changed a lot in my few years of working professionally. But I think in general, I tend to like to start my day kind of late. I sleep in a lot. I think sleep is a big thing for me. And then, I'll try to hit the gym, especially being on stage in just a vest on.
Yeah.
You have that pressure to kind of maintain your body a little bit
Right.
more than you might want to. And so I try to hit the gym, and then the rest of the day is kind of open to whatever I want to do. Like if I want to go to the park, read some books, or go hang out with some friends, like I have a little bit of time in the afternoon to kind of fill up with whatever I want, even if that's just like watching TV at home. And then I get to the theater about an hour before the show starts, and that's where the real kind of warm up begins. Like I warm up my voice, I warm up my body, and put on my makeup, put on my costume, and just get into the mindset of Aladdin. And then we put on the show.
Yeah. Do you find that, especially as you get more reps in for this particular production, but any of the shows that you've been in, that the preparation, as you mentioned, it evolves a little bit, but has that also gone with an evolution of perhaps what your own personality or character is? Have you, are you always a little bit more on the extroverted or introverted side? And does that change perhaps in the sort of lead up to the pre-show?
Yeah, 100%. I think I've done shows with varying, I guess, involvement during the show.
Yeah.
Aladdin, I've have the opportunity and pleasure to be on stage for basically the whole time. I think I'm
Yeah.
off stage for 10, 15 minutes in the whole show. And so because of that, like I'm using my body a lot and using my voice a lot. So I have to be mindful of kind of how I'm using my voice outside of the show. I am a pretty extroverted person, so I like hanging out with friends. I like going to parties. And so when that happens, you don't want to be speaking over loud music. You don't want to be like screaming at your friends during the day. So you just got to be more
Right.
mindful of that. And also, hydration is a big thing as well. So drinking a lot of water, especially during the show, like I'm sweating buckets during the
Yeah.
show. So you got to make sure you get the water in as well.
Do you have to keep your towel game pretty active during the
Yeah,
show, or
I have a wonderful dresser, Kayla, that helps me. Like she's always backstage. As soon as I get off stage, she hands me my towel and my water bottle
right?
every time. So she's got it down to a science.
I'm sure people who they might be like, oh man, it's a regular day. I got a bike to work and I sweat a lot, but whole different ball game when it comes to trying to make sure that you maintain that, to on stage. For you, like, has that practice part really resonated quite a bit? Meaning that, like, you take the practice and the rehearsal and the lead up to all of this, pretty seriously. And for that matter, do you prepare any differently now than perhaps when you first started?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I first started, again, it is like such an involved show for me that like everything was daunting to me. Like I was
Yeah.
worried about every little aspect of the show. So I was, if I wasn't in rehearsals, we did rehearsals from like 9 to 5 every day. So it was like basically a job
Yeah.
for 5.5 weeks before I started this. And then in that rehearsal time, like I was constantly, even if we were on a break, I was constantly working at it, working at it, working at it. And then when I would go home, when we're supposed to be resting, I would be rehearsing the dances, rehearsing the
Yeah.
scenes, rehearsing the songs. And so it was kind of like a constant process for that 5.5 weeks. But now it's definitely eased up. I've got almost like 600 shows down on my belt now.
Yeah.
And so I have like a little cheat sheet paper that I have on my dressing room station. If I'm ever kind of worried about getting into the world of Aladdin, getting into the mindset, I'll look at that cheat sheet paper. It
Yeah.
has intentions during each song, during each scene. And so remind me of that. And then you can kind of use your physical emotion during the show and during that day to kind of color the rest of the performance from
Right.
there, I think.
Let me ask you this, because you were in the North American production and then you made the transition to the Broadway production. Is there some sort of switch that had to go off? Did you have to make some sort of transition or transformation in going, even though you had the experience, but now sort of like taking that to Broadway with a different team and a little bit different mindset? Was there some sort of transition or change that you had to make?
I think so. I don't know if it would be that noticeable to audience members. Like if they had
Yeah.
seen the North American tour and they see me on Broadway. I worked with the director a lot about getting more mature and getting to be a
Mm,
different, like an older Aladdin. I mean, the North American tour, like I joined when I was 20 years old and now I'm 22. And so I have grown up a lot, like going through 63 different cities in a year and a half kind of, it did help me grow up. It made me realize things about myself and
mm.
about Aladdin and about, the world. And so it helps me become a more mature person. And so now, because I have that experience, I was able to kind of change my Aladdin a little bit to be that kind of more mature character, less childlike.
Yeah. You have to have sort of that youth and exuberance on stage, but as an
Right.
actor and as a performer, how would you say, how would you describe or define that maturity if you were having a conversation with 20-year-old Adi right now versus 22-year-old Adi? What would you say have been the biggest sort of transformations?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I personally know a little bit more about what makes me enjoy life and what
Hmm.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Like I feel a little less. I am a big people pleaser, so that was a big thing in my life at that point. So I think I've put a less. Still am. You can't really fully get rid of that part of yourself.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
but I put less, I guess, concentration on pleasing others, and I focus on myself a little bit more, and that helps me be more in my body. Helps me be more
Mm.
confident on stage. And one thing I noticed, I got to see the Broadway show before I took over, and
Yeah.
I just noticed that everyone on that stage has so much swag. I know it's like a a colloquial term, but that was the best way I could describe it to my castmates. And
Yeah.
I just try to have half as much swag as they do on stage.
The production team, I'm assuming, and I can sense that, especially from successful productions, become a family. And so for you, as you get to know people, as it becomes more of a family, and as you have this kind of mutual respect and admiration for each other, does that culture, does that tone, does that atmosphere and environment, especially for someone who has grown and matured, maybe had a little, taken a little bit more time with some patience and not necessarily paying attention to, people pleasing and all that. Is that chemistry that you've built up? Is that important to particularly unlock instinct as a part of this, as opposed to just pure and raw talent?
I think so. I'm a 100% believer in like the relationships you have on stage are kind of built on the relationships you have off stage as well.
Mm. Yeah.
And again, I'm an extroverted person. Like I love hanging out with people. I love getting to know people. That's kind of how I draw my energy. So I like to make the effort to get to know my castmates. I had that like, I mean, especially on tour when you're traveling, working, hanging out with the same people for the last like year and a half, like you become a family, like a real family.
Yeah.
You know, you have the people you don't quite like, you have the people you love, but there's still always that mutual love for each other. But
Yeah.
now that like you're on Broadway and everyone kind of has their own separate lives, like there is the ability to kind of lose that familial bond. But I personally know that I work better on stage if I have those offstage relationships. And so I have loved getting to know these people over the last like 3 months that I've been here. And I think we have gotten to a place where we're kind of family and we are friends outside of work as well.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's needed, I think.
I imagine that makes it that much easier again for like you to just be you and
Yeah.
allow for that instinct and natural ability to, in a way, in such a structured and very, very manicured and heavily directed set of skills that you have to perform. And yet, there are always little nuances to it, I imagine, where your instinct and your experience then come through, and maybe it's easier when it's with people and that you sort of like have that familiar relationship with.
100%. And like the audience might not see it, but like we're having fun on stage, and since we've built those bonds, like we'll do something funny just for one person on stage, but no one else will understand what it was.
Yeah.
It's just like the small little moments you have with each other that kind of make the performance that much more fun.
How do you deal with mistakes and nuances that sometimes either are super obvious to the audience and things that you're just like, oh boy, that really went wrong, and maybe only the cast and the directors know it and the production team knows it, but how do you deal with that a little bit differently perhaps than when you first started out?
I think I have learned a little bit. I think when I started, there would be a few times when I'd forget a line and just completely blank.
Yeah.
But I feel, knock on wood, that I've gotten a little better at kind of bridging the gap between a blank mind and figuring out where to go after that, especially knowing the show and knowing where it has to go now. You can figure out some version of a sentence that brings you to the next line.
Yeah.
But I think it's, you have to trust your castmates as well. Like when you make a mistake, sometimes they'll have to pick up the slack and you'll talk about it off stage. You'll be like, hey, why'd you do that to me, bro?
Right.
But like it happens. It's live theater and mistakes will happen, but sometimes you just got to laugh it off and keep going. Cause the worst part is if you like just shut down and can't get through the show.
Right. That would, I'm sure be, not the most memorable of moments. You're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. After a quick break, let's come back to our conversation with Adi Roy. Stay tuned. Conversation. It's the antidote to apathy and the catalyst for relationships. I'm Abhay Dandekar, and I share conversations with global Indians and South Asians, so everyone can say, trust me, I know what I'm doing. New episodes weekly, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Hi everyone, this is Chef Vikas Khanna. I am a chef, I am an author, filmmaker, documentarian, and you're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. Hello everyone, my name is Tam France.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal.
Hi, my name is Richa Morjani, and you're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing with Abhay Dandekar.
You're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. Let's rejoin our conversation now with Adi Roy. I'm curious, like from your previous experiences from Jagged Little Pill, are there elements of performance or techniques or lessons and learnings from those previous experiences that you definitely hang on to and that have actually accelerated the kind of trust that you built for yourself and with your team on Aladdin?
100%. During Jagged, I feel like I tend to say that I don't remember a lot of my time with Jagged just because it was a whirlwind time for my life.
Yeah.
I had been plucked out of college to come be on Broadway, and that in itself was a crazy time for me. I was still living in my college dorm room while commuting to work
Right.
because I went to NYU.
Yeah.
And so just even that was crazy. But it was like 2 months of being on cloud nine. So I feel like I didn't remember too much of it. Like I was just living in the happiness of being on Broadway, being where I've wanted to be for so long.
Right.
But I think I have learned a lot in terms of the craft. I think I was so granular about things back then. Like I wanted to make it perfect for myself in my mind, but I don't think it was quite getting perceived in the audience that way.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I've learned that, especially with theater, you have to work for the entire theater. You have to do things that allow the entire theater to come into the story and believe the story. Whereas with, I guess, like film and TV, which I was studying at college, it's kind of more granular. It's kind of even like a twitch of the eye will, change the perception of the scene. So I had to let go of all that and had to make sure that I'm bringing everyone else into my world as well, which is a lot of like actor talk for just being more open, being more.
But it's actor talk, and yet if you think about this in perfecting the craft and all the little techniques that you develop, is it better in fact to have more breadth of experiences because you just see a diversity of ways that people deal with somewhat of the same thing, whether that's letting go of some of the attention to those small details and being granular versus kind of living in the moment and making sure that you're engaged and present. Is it better to have that sort of breadth of experiences or to perfect the vertical, right? To sort of say that, like, nope, I need to like take this technique and just iterate on it until it's perfect. How do you approach that? Because again, like that breadth of experience is not always possible when you're trying to really find a way to perfect a particular role.
Yeah, I think there's room for both. I personally feel like the more you do things that are out of your comfort zone, the more you'll get better overall. I feel like the way I pursued Aladdin was very different from the way I pursued Jagged Little Pill. The way I saw Jagged Little Pill was very kind of, everything is very intellectual, and I have to give the service that it requires because it dealt with such heavy topics.
Yeah.
So I wanted it to be very, very grounded, very nuanced, and sometimes that might not have shown. But for Aladdin, like, you want the spectacle, you want to have that magic, you want to be grandeur, I guess. And so there is two very different techniques. Like I'm trying to become more open, more big, and so I would say I like to pursue the breadth of kind of experiences, and you get to see what works for you and what doesn't. Especially like what works for bringing the audience into you and what doesn't, or what might be a little bit more murky. Obviously, like, you should still work on everything. I think that makes you a well-rounded actor. But if you have something that you feel you're good at, then you can become a one-trick pony.
Yeah, why not, right? I mean, like, you
Why
have a
not?
skill,
Why
but
not?
just you have to use it, and I'm sure that like you find that with more exposure and experience, you just perfect the art of taking each of those like pieces of each of those little skills and marrying it to others. I like how you mentioned that you're trying to bring the audience in with you, and that's something that sort of breaks down that fourth wall, right? And allows for people to really step into your characters. When for you personally, I mean, I know you were born in Singapore, you moved around a lot, settled in New Jersey, and kind of had some formative time there. Has that ability to kind of change directions and really get good at, in fact, being around different groups of people and learning in different environments and kind of getting comfortable in different environments, how is that translated to making you a better artist and making you a better performer?
That's a good question. I don't know if I've ever fully like thought about it that way, but it's given me some new perspective. Yeah, I think again, acting is about the relationships you have on stage, and if
Yeah.
those are real relationships, they will read real for the audience. And so I think because I've moved around, because I've had to find my footing in very many different places, I think everyone kind of has to, even if it's just like you lived one place and you're going to college somewhere else, like you have to still figure out how to build a life somewhere else. So the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I think you are more easily adaptable if you go through those experiences. You're
Mm.
easier. It's easier to kind of figure out how to build real relationships, and that's, I feel like, paramount to being an actor.
Being an actor and having a great solid run with a production team and now having two different Broadway experiences. I've heard other actors, that I've had conversations with talking about that they're just, no matter what, even if they're in the same spot for 3 years, they do feel internally like they're always auditioning or they're always on display and thinking about sort of like, hey, you know what? Yes, who is it out there that's watching me? And so in a way, is it hard to find balance between feeling comfortable with the production and then also that sort of idea of ambition and feeling complacent and restless and securing the next job or the next gig? And how have you been able to sort of marry both of those together?
That's a good question. I think, as you probably have heard, like a lot of people think that acting is the jobs that we do, but like some actors believe that the real job of acting is the audition part of it. Like you're constantly auditioning. And so if you treat the auditioning as the job, and then the actual acting as kind of the result of the job, like the gift that you receive for getting the job,
Yeah.
I feel like that helps kind of bridge the gap of like feeling complacent, and but also feeling grateful, and also feeling like you still have to, you want to be ambitious, you want to find things that excite you creatively. And so I feel like thinking of it that way, I've heard other actors talk about it that way, and that kind of has helped me not feel like, oh man, I don't want to be complacent, like I don't want to
Right.
just let go of everything. But yeah, it reminds you to be grateful about it, and also it's a gift that you get to do a job.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I do think that there's some moments where you really, really want to be grateful and have gratitude for it. And yet the craft that you're perfecting perhaps is when you're in the spotlight and you're constantly auditioning in that way. For you, does that mean that it's perhaps, and maybe it doesn't, but because I don't want to assume that, but does it mean that it's sometimes very hard to find a place of being content?
Oof, yeah, that's the actor's age old question.
Right.
I feel everyone. I mean, it's not even just actors. I think everyone
Sure.
like wants something else. Even if you have it, you want something else. And especially with acting, where it's so glamorized, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like I want the next thing. I want the next thing. But then you have to remind yourself, like, I, for me personally, I'm 22 playing the lead role in a Broadway show. Like, I don't think that many people can say that. And so you have to kind of pinch yourself. Like, I dreamed about this life just years ago, and
Yeah.
here I am years later doing it. And so, yes and no. I feel like everyone will always feel discontented with where they are.
Mm.
But as long as you remain grateful, as long as you tell yourself, remind yourself about these wonderful things, like, or think about your previous self who is sitting in your bedroom, childhood bedroom, dreaming of being on Broadway. You kind of,
Yeah.
you get that excitement, you get that contentment again. I'm just like, I'm starting to smile just thinking about it. Like that was a good question for me personally. Like that healed my heart a little bit.
We're all about healing hearts. That's true. You're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. After a quick break, let's come back to our conversation with Adi Roy. Stay tuned.
Every story told is a lesson learned, and every lesson learned is a story waiting to be told. I'm Abhay Dandekar, and I share conversations with global Indians and South Asians so everyone can say, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." New episodes weekly, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Hi, this is Vidya Balan, and you're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing.
Hi, this is Madhuri Dixit.
Hi, this is Farhan Akhtar.
Hi, I'm Lily Singh, and you're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing.
Hi there, I'm Abhay Dandekar, and you're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. Let's rejoin our conversation now with Broadway actor Adi Roy. I want to ask you this because, again, this is something that, particularly given your background, I'm very curious about. When you're reflecting on the sort of professional journey and your professional identity, right? This sort of like identity formation for you as a performer, as an artist, do you consider yourself an actor, an artist, or performer, or is it important to have the South Asian American actor or the South Asian American or Indian American actor, performer, artist label on that? Or for that matter, does it matter?
I think it definitely matters. I mean, I think that just looking at me, you'll realize that I am a South Indian or South Asian actor. But I think yes, it is good to remind people that you are South Asian. You are someone that is a minority in this country that is taking up this lead role in a musical, because it's a point of representation that like some people haven't had. I know that I found my representation growing up in Bollywood and Tollywood movies. My parents would sit down, like that was our dinner time kind of conversation. Instead of conversation, we would sit down and watch a movie all together. And so that kind of like brought me up because there weren't really too many South Asian actors in English movies. Like there just weren't. So we couldn't really bond on that fact. So because I can understand their languages, I would just sit down and watch these Bollywood and Tollywood movies. Tollywood being Telugu. My mom is from Andhra, so she speaks Telugu. So we really love those Tollywood movies.
Well, I mean, and in watching Bollywood and watching Tollywood, and now thinking about this, it's certainly, your craft and your skill in playing a role has to be, obviously, if there are cultural aspects of it, or if there are things written in there that blend in who you are and make it easier to perform that particular role. And yet I'm sure in some ways, kind of like being a strong actor or performer or artist is in a way agnostic to that as well. But in a sense, like, is it important for you that there's a, whether people call it a responsibility or people call it like representation, like, is that something you want to be front and center for your work? Or is it sort of a sidecar, if you will? And it can be either. There isn't a right answer to that one, but I'm just curious, like, especially in a place like Broadway that hasn't been, penetrated a lot particularly by Indian American or South Asian American artists. How does that hit you?
I think I've always thought of it as I want to be known for my work and for my background.
Yeah.
So as long as I have this weird kind of conflict with that, because I want it to be not the fact that I am getting work that makes me that good actor for this background. I want it to be the work that I'm giving and the work that I'm producing to define me as a good actor. And then also like, hey, this is a person that is from India and he's doing this wonderful job out here in America. I think it's definitely, it is good to have those people as points of representation. It's humbling to think that I might be one of them because I feel like I'm so early on in my career that it's an honor to be that.
I mentioned that, Broadway being sort of a tougher
nut to crack, and it is a little bit more challenging of a place to penetrate when it comes to South Asian artists or performers. And why do you think that is? And perhaps what needs to change to make that more of an accessible platform, an easier platform, or one where those who are in places of power or places where the decisions get made can start reflecting on that a little bit and make more opportunities perhaps for not just South Asian or Indian Americans, but anyone out there.
I think it's definitely, I think, a little bit of both sides. I feel like, yes, producers also they have to open more space, and I don't think that there has been a precedent for that. In It's starting to change now, but before this, I feel as though there wasn't really a precedent for allowing minority actors to kind of take up spaces that are not defined specifically as that minority. Or but I think it's starting to change. I think there's more of an agnostic view of acting, and as more people in minority groups start taking up those roles, I think people will realize, not only just the audience, but like the people behind the scenes will also realize, oh, this is possible. Like, you don't have to just cast you don't have to cast just like white people, basically. It can be a minority actor, as even if it's not specified for that. It's more like defined by the work and defined by the performance, I guess.
I mean, and as someone who's emerging in their career, and a lot of this is blossoming for you, do you have designs on that space, whether it's directing or producing or writing, and thinking a little bit about like wielding perhaps those decision making capabilities, and in the future sort of like being able to be at the place where yes, I can actually be a part of that and make those sort of things happen?
Yeah, I'd say so. I haven't really dabbled in it too much. I have a bit of fear, actually, of being kind of in that directorial or even like writing. But I've been open to producing stuff for a while. I mean, on Jagged, we had some South Asian producers, and I kind of really admired having a South Asian producer. I don't think I've ever heard of that, ever seen that, and just even seeing that point of representation, that kind of opened a door for me myself. Like, I was like, okay, I don't see why I can't do this as well. You know what I
why
mean?
not?
So why not? Why not? And so I think so. I'm going to keep the door open. I'm going to follow it where it takes me. But as of right now, I don't have anything stirring yet.
Yet being the key word, right?
Yet.
And so a couple of more rapid fire ones. Talk to me about your favorite Alanis Morissette song.
Oh my gosh, I would probably have to say "Head Over Feet." That was the one I had the most fun on. I know "Ironic" is probably the cliche answer, and I did have a lot of fun singing "Ironic," but "Head Over Feet," we had a swing set in the Broadway production that we were like doing tricks off of while singing that song, and that was just like the most fun I've had, I think, in a show.
No. That's I'm sure everyone has their own like answer for that. I actually like that. There's I don't know the title of it, but there's a song where she's just saying it's a lot about gratitude, and she's saying thank you, and there's a "Thank You India" part in one of the songs. I forget. So
it's called "Thank You," I think.
Is that it? Yeah, all right.
I think so.
I gotta step up my Alanis game here. I can't believe I'm not remembering the song. How about, what's your favorite Disney movie?
Ooh, I'd have to say Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Ooh, wow. Okay, that was a wild card for sure. And
it's also one of my favorite stage plays as well. So that kind of colors it as well.
Yeah, no. And was that something that you watched as a kid growing up, or?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. I watched both the bootleg, of the stage version and the animated feature countless times.
Nice. Well, listen, we'll get you out of here on this. I mean, I know that audiences are being thrilled, particularly with your performances. But for those who are now getting to see you for the first time, and they're just actually getting introduced to you, what do you want them to remember about you the most? How do you want them to feel, particularly after seeing you for the first time?
I think the greatest compliment an actor in general can receive is that someone felt something, that someone felt a real experience that you were feeling on stage, and they felt that experience, internalized it, and kind of had that experience with you. And if you feel something while coming to Aladdin, I hope that so that's something I can do for you, and hopefully you take away that this story is, while it's a lot of glitz and glamour, it's also like a very grounded human story, especially with Aladdin himself. He kind of wants to, he's someone who just wants to better himself at the end of the day. And that's something, it's a human experience that everyone can relate to. And if you buy into that idea, then I think you'll go on a wonderful journey with us.
Well, I know lots of people are having that experience, relating to you and your performance, and really going on that journey, and hopefully for many, many more journeys. Adi, thank you so much. This was really a treat to share a conversation, and I hope we can catch up with you down the road.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Adi. And if you're in New York, please check out Adi as Aladdin at the New Amsterdam Theater. Big shout out to Sonali on her first birthday, and to all you theater kids out there. Till next time, I'm Abhay Darndekar.